and stay inside your premises. Today's topic is your Swift iOS project ready to deploy? Even though the topic I have chosen narrows down to Swift iOS, most of the concepts that I'm going to talk about today are applicable to most of the software projects. Before going on, let me introduce myself. Kanchana has done most of the things, but I will repeat. My name is AnujAroshA, graduated from University of Colombo School of Computing, and have been working in the industry for more than 9 years as a software engineer. During that time, I was exposed to several programming languages, tools, and technologies, but developing software for Apple products has become one of my passions. That is one of the reasons I'm taking a Swift iOS project as an example for today's presentation. Let's dive directly into our topic. You may expect an agenda here as for this slide, but I have skipped that part for now because I want you to question yourself about the topic as well as about your iOS project, whether it is prepared to deploy or ship to your client, right? Let's take a minimum working Swift iOS project. We can put an application into that category if it meets the following requirements. First one is meet the business logic. Commercial applications try to add a business value to the application by providing a solution to an existing problem or trying to ease a process or at least create a necessity to have that application. By the time we deliver the end product to the end user, we need to guarantee that it will do what it means to be in order to get some revenue, right? So that is meet the business logic. The next point is it should run on a real device. Mostly iOS application developed using simulators or one or two real devices which we are using as test devices in the industry or at the office. But when it is available in the App Store, it will be exposed to a wide range of devices and iOS versions, right? If you go to the App Store and see the applications and try to install an application, you can understand that in the attributes of that application, it has mentioned whether that application is supposed to which kind of devices and which versions. As developers, we must ensure our applications run most of those devices in a user-friendly manner, right? The other point is that application should pass the Apple review process. In order to maintain several facts like mentioned in the Apple review process, safety, performance, business, design, and legal, every application we are pushing to the App Store must pass the Apple review process. In this whole application development process, what I mean is the moment an idea has arisen and to the point the final product goes to the customer's hand, that process, there are several roles involved, which you can call that as stakeholders. So client may come up with an idea. They may lack technology expertise where they need someone to make the idea to a real world application. That's where our roles become important. Finally, we both parties need to satisfy the end user who are going to use this application. By keeping all of these things in your mind, let's take a very small example of working code. Okay? I hope you can see my Xcode project. I'm not going to code here, so don't worry about the text size here. I have created a simple application, and what it does is fetch some data from a remote server. This is an open source link, so no worries about showing that to you. Remote server and show it to the user, right? So I'm taking the data from this server and display to the user. As you can see, all the logic I have written is in a single file. This is a very simple application. There are people who thinks this is enough. Assume this is an application where the user gets daily COVID-19 news in Sri Lanka and show it to the user, right? Here, if we take this, it's actually shows the data. The idea is here, it runs on a real device and we can make pass the Apple review process. But my question is that enough? That is what we are going to concern in our rest of slides. So things you may need to do after the first release are maintain your project. You may think after the first release, you don't need to do anything at all. Even though clients don't need to add extra features and there are no bugs in the existing code, Apple company itself is not stopping manufacturing new iOS devices and releasing better performance underlying OSs. At least they will update their App Store policies or certification policies where developers need to resubmit the applications. Right? Therefore, our source needs to be maintained. So that is our first point. So your source code, when you are writing a source code, you should have in your mind it should be maintainable. The other point is the same client may come up with the same business logic with a different partner, right? In such a scenario, we should have reusability of the code. I have actually experience in that in the real world, I mean in the industry. What we had to change is the first partner's logo with the new partner logo and the API endpoints. The business logic and the user interfaces are same in both applications. So the second point you need to keep in mind when you are coding is reusability of the code. The next thing we may need to do after the first release is customize the project. This is also I experienced with the same project that I have mentioned earlier. The scenario is if the client is same, but he comes with a new partner where he wants the original application as it is with an additional features specific to their company. Okay. So I can remember we had a tab-based application, and what we had to do is just add another tab only for that particular customer and show the additional features they needed. Finally, with that same project, we have delivered 4 applications, right? Which means same code base to 4 different clients. Likewise, when you are writing your codes, you have to keep in mind these 3 main points. There are sub points, but these 3 main points are very crucial. Once we have requirements like that, we have to face some practical issues, like I have mentioned here. 2 of them I have already explained. Overlying version updates and policy updates. Those are out of our hands. What we have to do is to be prepared for such incidents when you start the project. The other issue is developers resign. That happens for several reasons, which I'm not going to elaborate here, but it happens. And we need to prepare for that as well. Let's see how can we address those issues. Actually, these bullet points are the agenda for my rest of the talk. So this is kind of my agenda sheet. For those people who thought about running code, the code I displayed is enough. Have you ever thought of adding following features to your project? We will cover each of these topics in our next slides. So the first topic is language standards and coding standards. In every programming language, it has standards defined. From the languages that I know, Python has a very descriptive style guide for code, which is called PEP8. Developers should have an understanding of those guidelines, right? The way the syntax has been, whether the variables has declared, kind of things. Apart from that, a company, a team, or a project can come up with several coding rules. As an example, they may come up with constant variables should be all capital, or method variable should start with underscore, something like that as an example. So if you are in one of such a team where that team has a different set of guidelines, you should be able to follow that rules as well. So because you are when in the industry, you are not working alone, you are working with a team, right? You have to follow the team's guideline as well. When we take the whole project, it may have been designed for a specific architecture, right? Here, the second point I have mentioned design patterns, which is actually what I'm mentioning is architectural wise patterns, right? So, but if someone or one member changes that the patterns or the architectural pattern just because he's comfortable with another architecture, the whole project gets scrambled in the long run. As an example, if your application has your team has designed the application for the MVVM architecture, but you are familiar with MVC architecture. Once you join the team, you think, no, I am familiar with MVC, and I think this is I should write the rest of the code at MVC. Then things are getting scrambled because until that point, the code has written in the MVVM architecture. So you are going to try to write something different. Then there's misconcept and the codes get scrambled. So the third point that is applicable not only to developers but also for the designers. They also should maintain the same theme throughout the entire application. If every member follows the same rules and if they maintain proper documentation, switching employees in the same domain will not be a big headache to the project, right? Let's take a look at the same previous code with some coding standards and design patterns which I have included. I can hear someone is talking. Okay, cool. I hope that's a mistake. Yeah, like I mentioned, I'm not going to code here. I have already ready-made code. Let it build. Yeah. So the reason I'm showing this code is to show you how a simple project can evolve when we follow standards before the final release, right? What you have to remember is we have started with a working project, and what we should submit is also a working project, but with more maintainability, reusability, and easy to customize manner. Assume we have applied, we have included some Apple standards and company standards. As an example, if you can remember, in the previous code, I shown that everything written in a single file. But we have a practice. In the views file, we don't write the business logic. We are separating business logic into a different file. That's why we have an additional file included, and some ports have been removed from the view file. Just for you to easy to understand, I will show you the changes which has happened. So here, in the initial project, I have written everything in single file. Now in the new one, I have removed the logic and I have added different file in order to have this business logic. Right. So I'm not saying this is fully MVVM included. I'm just trying to show you that when we are adhere to some patterns, either it's language standards or team standards or the office standards that we are following, the code is evolving. So developers should have understand of taking time to that, and the people who are managing the team and who are dealing with the clients to create the deadlines should also have a concern. Let developers spend time on that to have a better code. Right. Let's go to our next slide. So now our next point is unit testing. Just think about your projects. Have your project following any architectural patterns? Have you included unit tests into your projects? And even though I'm separating this, I'm following an order. You should think about these topics that I am explaining here even before you write a single code. Right? So once you write the code, as an example, you may have heard TDD, which is called test-driven development. That is a good way of starting. So first, you do not implement the UI or UI part. What you are trying to do is trying to write the unit test that satisfy your business logic. Right. Let's talk about our next point is having unit tests for your project. Unit testing ensures that all code meets quality standards before it's deployed. This ensures a reliable engineering environment where the quality is, paramount. Over the course of the product development life cycle, unit testing saves time and money and helps developers write better code more efficiently. These points that you can see on the slides are some of the benefits we are having because of the unit testing, which makes the process more agile, quality of code, find software bugs easily, facilitate changes, and simplifies integration. Okay, so let's have a look how the previous code has evolved when we had a simple unit test to the project. Right here, I have added only one unit test. Like earlier, let's okay, let's wait until it's built. And in the meantime, okay, so this project I have added a unit test to that same previous code. But if you can remember, even when I'm adding a unit test, the number of files has been increased. Right? I will show you why. One of the main reason is the separation of concerns, what we are calling is SOC. Yeah, I will better show you in the sheet. So here, to write the unit test, I needed a mock service. Here, I needed this mock data service. In order to have that service, I have to change my previous codes, right? So if you can remember the previous slide, it says when we are adding unit tests, actually not in this slide, I have mentioned that the code, when we are adding unit tests, the code quality will be increased. So that is an example that I can show you here. So here in the model, it actually not directly access the API. It has a protocol or the interface where the test targets as well as your original code access the same method, but through a common interface. Right? So make sure when you are writing, you include unit tests into your project. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, this is our next point. I believe and I personally experience this is one of the important thing, and this is one of the least concerned things among the developers, code coverage. And this is one of the close topic which goes with the unit test, and one most of our developers is neglecting. What is code coverage? Is the percentage of code that is covered by automated tests or unit tests. Right? One of the reasons I love Xcode IDE is it comes with a code coverage facility. What we need is to enable it and get used to it, and also take most out of it. Right? So my next example is the same project by adding code coverage facilities. So before I move, let me run this unit test, and show you some things. Just concern about this column, that the light gray column this side. Another I will show you once. Yeah, here that unit test, all unit tests passed. Yep. Here, just when I changed and run in the next time, just concern about this and a code coverage. Here you don't get. Yeah. So that's an earlier run I have when I have done it rehearsal. So anyway, here you don't have even activated the unit test project to enable code coverage. So I will enable that one. Branch. Let me close the Xcode. Otherwise, you have my previous sessions. So okay. So this is the same project with enabling code coverage for unit test. So this is my unit test target, and let's. This is my unit test file. Runtime unit test. Let's run the unit test again. What I have done here is I have enabled code coverage. I will show you the benefits you can get once you enable code coverage and when you get used to this code coverage, right? So now the test, all the tests ran and those tests passed. Now here you can see this has some numbers, which means how many times these functions or the parts has been called during the test, right? If you go to this, the our view file, there you have green marks as well as red marks. Red marks means this this part of the code hasn't covered during the unit tests, right? You can actually see how much percentage covered. With the unit test that I have written here, it covers only 70.5% of the whole code. Right? When you expand this, you can see file by file, which file has covered most and which files has covered least. And if you expand more, you can find out which functions hasn't called at least once and which functions has called. Right. So this is very important part where developers neglect, either because they don't have time to do that, or they don't have enough practice or confidence to convince their superiors, I mean their seniors, that this is a much needed component that we should include into our project before we are shipping it to the customers or the clients. So by running this, we can find out which code part is very important, which code path hasn't run even once, which code the code paths haven't run, maybe we can omit those code paths. That's how we can improve our quality of code. Okay. That's about the code coverage for unit testing. Let's move on. Yeah, before moving on, I think I haven't showed you the JIT part where you compare adding unit test and enabling code coverage. Is it just a setting that you need to enable in your Xcode project, right? Then you code provides you a better overview which part has covered and which part has not. Right. Let's move on to our next point. Yep, UI testing. So the at the beginning of the presentation, I told that some of the concepts that I'm telling here are applicable for most projects. So unit test and code coverage such projects, but UI testing is for the backend projects. We don't need UI testing, right? So they have different testings. But the front-end projects and the iOS application like that, we do need UI testing. If you can remember the, I will show you again that here, this is the content view where we are having the view. Here, some code path hasn't covered during the code coverage or unit test. In order to cover this, we need to have unit tests, right? So there's a logical reasons behind this. I mean, when we have an architectural design, we are practicing not to write business logic in our views. So we are writing business logic in a separate files. In order to test those business logics, we are having unit tests. Then what will happen to the code written in the view? So how and who will be tested those codes? That's where UI tests are important. Okay. Application is not complete only with backend coding. It should have an attractive, user-friendly UI, especially with mobile applications or web or desktop applications kind of things. That's why UI testing also takes a major part of application development life cycles. User interface testing simply involves assessing the UI on the basis of important variables such as visibility, consistency, accessibility, usability, and compatibility. Right? So, as you can see in this slide, why do we need that unit testing? That consistency of themes. If I tell you an example, the usage of colors. If we are having one color, it's not what I'm not saying using one color throughout every view. We have a color theme for an application. So we change it depend on some logics. If not, we are not changing just because to get some attraction or to have fun. We are not changing like that because when sometimes the end user, when they don't need to read the text, just by seeing the color, they can understand whether it's a critical message or normal message or just a warning. So to maintain that pattern, we have to have this consistency of theme, like colors, icon styles, font type and size, likewise. Right? So let me show you an example, the same code with adding a single UI test. So here we need our target, rid of these, and what we are concerning here is a UI test. Right, let's build these. Here, this is the result of last unit test that I ran. Here you can see UI test hasn't run. Let's run that as well. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm showing this not to understand or follow the codes, just to show you how your project evolves when you add these necessary components into your project. Right? Okay, now the test has passed. Let me go to the JIT project. Sorry, JIT client. Here you can see I had even in the content view. Content view is this view. In order to write the UI test, I had to add this code line. So even without this code line, application runs. But in order to have UI test in your project, we have to have this line of code, right? That's why I'm saying the project is evolving, expanding when you are adding these meaningful components and must needed components into your projects. Okay. So yeah, at the beginning I have mentioned once you add those components, like in the beginning, your app should run and give the expected output, right? Before going on, I will show you some other things that you can do with Xcode, especially here, like I mentioned, still the code is running without any issue. Here, you can see how much when you run the application, you can see how much CPU, how much memory, how much disk space, how much of network usage is using your application, right? These are also that Xcode and the Apple itself, they have provided us this opportunity. What we need to do is we have to invest some time on that and get most out of these options, right? For some projects, we are even using third-party libraries in order to get this same dashboard, same output in a web interface or something else, right? So, but here in the iOS projects, we do have options What we need is just to be familiar with that. As an example, if you run a background thread, you can see a new thread pops up here. Right? And if you have a memory leak or something, then you can identify here and you can open the instruments. Instruments also a Xcode tool. It has pretty much, I mean, several options, not only memory, it's log management, time management, identify zombies. Just try it if you get a chance. I just show you these components you have to include into your project and try and test it out before you ship your application to the release, to App Store, or to your client. Right? Then you can have more manageable, more bug-free, more efficient product at the end. Yeah, that's what my last slide is. That last but actually not least, things we should do before deploying a project is using instruments to find memory leaks and profiling. An instrument is also an Xcode tool that I have showed earlier. It has a fully packaged IDE to deliver the best outcome for your end users. Apart from those, the last option here, we can get help from third-party tools such as Fluent and Splunk to analyze logs in released application, which I'm not going to cover in this session. But when you are coding like that, you keep that also in your mind as well. As an example, assume your application is using some known bunch of people where we know their IDs. Maybe it's identity number, some office number, and someone is claiming that application is crashing on his or her device. So if you want to analyze that, so we are getting the complaint only from his or her device, single device. So what we need, we just want his or her logs only, right? In order to do that, we can manage logs. What we are writing here, we can have log management tool like Fluent Bit that I have mentioned, where we can forward this into the Splunk, where we can analyze the logs and find out the errors. Keep those in your mind when you are writing, whether you can integrate those kind of third parties to identify the logs or the crashes or the performance once you ship the application. Okay. So I think those are the all points that I'm going to deliver you today. I especially hope Apple product developers got the most out of these sessions. And if you are an iOS engineer, be proud of your career, because if you are at the right place at the right time, income and job satisfaction is nothing for you. Thank you all. And if you have any questions, we can take now.
Anyone has any questions? Okay, it seems, Arush, nobody has any questions at this moment. So let me thank Arosha for Creative Tech Talks, successful Creative Tech Talk. And we will meet you again with another Tech Talk soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Bye.